I just want to say to them really often is, you need to write the book because they don't even have the book. Write something. And I even suggest to them, if you're in the process of writing it, get a Facebook page right away and talk about your writing.
Yes. It's a good way to start building your
people,
foundation.
Get some people at least to understand that you're doing something. And I'm trying to hearken back to how little I knew in the beginning as opposed to what I know now.
Yeah.
And the publishing aspect, I find the writing is fun. The publishing is really, you can work your way through that. If you're not, if you don't need to have, you know, Simon and Schuster publish you or something like that, and you want to do small press or you want to do self-publishing, it's easy. It's really easy. Just follow the instructions. And if you really, you know, go create space. It couldn't be easier than that or cheaper.
Right, you upload the tools in there.
Exactly.
Yes.
But and then there's marketing.
Right. Yeah, marketing is the never-ending.
And we talk about this all the time.
Yeah.
And what are you doing? And what am I doing? And yeah. And this show is part of my marketing.
Right. And you know, I always say, if you get a bunch of authors in a room, the two topics that always come up: did you traditional publish or self-publish? And what are you doing for marketing?
Exactly.
You know, and they are the two biggest questions. Yeah, when I do my presentations too, you know, what I try to tell people is, you know, you want to write something, book, short story, poem, whatever it may be. You know, there's that initial inspiration, but I think what happens to a lot of people is just information overload. They start to look at the industry and all the different choices, and the sheer enormity of it leaves them like a deer in the headlights. And it almost shuts them down because they feel, well, all right, you know, if I go ahead and write this thing, what am I going to do? You know, I really don't know what to do. So you went about it a little bit different way. You had your learning experience with your self-publisher. You know, I came in from a different course. I had a bunch of short stories to work with. So I figured, well, rather than try to tackle the enormity, let me nibble. So I worked with my short stories first, and I learned so much through doing that, that when I started to look at going into books, it was more of a graduating step rather than, you know, the swan dive.
Yeah, I started right out with novel writing, and I too took a course. I took a couple of courses in novel writing, but the institute that I took the courses from also offered a lot of information about marketing. So it was all a learning experience, and I almost say that if the people you have in your workshop, you realize that some of them actually are going to publish a book and that others never will. You can tell by pretty much the questions they ask and their engagement. And I think to myself, writing a book, even though I say that's the fun part, getting a book actually written and in a form that could be published, even by, you know, self-publishing, is an enormous task.
Yes, it is.
And it requires dedication and discipline. And if you're taking a workshop and this is overwhelming you beyond any of your wildest dreams, don't do it.
Yeah.
Because it's nerve-wracking. I remember when I don't know about you, but when I first started this, I was a lot more tense about everything. Oh my God, it was ridiculous.
I mean, for years, I used to get like practical panic attacks just looking at a reference book and trying to wrap my mind around the whole thing.
Yeah.
I like to use the word perseverance. You know, it's a long, slow haul. The industry is very unforgiving. The marketplace is, you know, brutal, for lack of a better word. So you have to come into it with a lot of patience, a lot of, as you said, patience and discipline, and your sensitivities need to be hardened a little bit because of all the rejection you're going to endure.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's why I found working with short stories for me was a great learning process. The average short story receives 40 rejections and 2 years of wait times before it's published. Not to honk my horn, but fortunately I never got to that point, but I got more than my handful of rejections. And in the beginning, they hurt because you write something.
This is your baby.
Right, it's your baby. You send it out to the world, and it's like someone comes along with a big boot and squashes it. So going through that process and bit by bit realizing, okay, this is just the way it is. It's not personal. And some editors will even say, don't take a rejection as a personal statement. It may just be that their slate is full. It doesn't meet what they're looking for at the moment. It could be a whole range of objective things that have nothing to do with you or your writing.
Oh, absolutely.
So to get past that realization, though, of thinking that, oh, they don't like me, to this wasn't just the time for this piece. It takes time and just
It's
that
the journey.
understanding. Yes.
It's the journey. And I often ask authors, and you know this because you've been on the show before, it's what you want out of it. You have to really sit yourself down and think about your own personality. What do I want from this experience? And for me, it was, I want to tell these stories.
Yeah.
I'm having fun with this little girl in my books, and I like to I like to talk about science. It's part of my teaching personality. I love doing this show. I love doing my lectures. My lectures are all about topics in forensic science. I like talking to people about writing. So I'm doing what I like.
Right.
And if I'm never famous, which I hope I'm never famous, watching TV and seeing what fame does, to your lifestyle and everything else, that's just fine. I'm perfectly happy with this. And I'm going to go the opposite route of you. I'm going to short stories. That's going to be my next thing. So, in fact, I have 3 or 4 written, and we'll see.
Well, look at it this way. You have the advantage now with the number of books you've written. You're settled in your narrative voice. You're comfortable with what you want. You're realistic about what your goals are. These are things for a lot of people who come in fresh. They don't even really understand to consider those things. You know, for me, my biggest thing is managing my time. You know, with 6 books and the presentations and everything else I'm involved in.
And a full-time job.
Yes,
and a family.
Full-time job, right. So there's a lot there, and there's only 24 hours in the day. So in the beginning, like everybody else who gets in and they get their first book published, you're thinking, career replacement. I'm going to live, the author lifestyle, and it's a wonderful dream. For a few people, lightning strikes, and that works out. But for the other 99.99%, it's that long, slow journey we were just talking about. But I think at the end of the day, and what I always try to say to people when I talk about this topic is, remember, you wrote something for people to read it. So obviously, the more people who read it, the better that works out for you. But in the beginning, just try to find ways to connect to people and have them read what you wrote. That's really the whole idea behind it. Because you sat down, you wrote a story because, as you said, you wanted to share something. As an author, you felt compelled to do this thing and have someone read it, to enjoy a reading experience. So yes, the money and everything else, those are certainly things you need to keep in mind, because the other thing I tell people is, if you want to publish a book, guess what? You're in business now, and you have to look at it with a certain business, perspective. But really, this should be a passion project for you. Some people say to me, where do you get the time and the energy? I'm like, but this is what I love to do.
Right. I love to tell a story. I really don't think of myself so much as an author. When people say the author, Linda, I think to myself, I'm a storyteller. I'll make them up. I'll make crazy stories, but I like to tell a story.
Right.
And so what's next for you? We have about a minute.
What's next for me? I'm working on another science fiction novel set in the not so distant, not so rosy future.
I hope it's not gory.
And what was it?
I hope it's not gory.
It's a little more like, with the digital now, it's more cerebral than anything else.
Yeah, well, most of your stories are really more cerebral.
Yes, and
What's
it's like,
in the imagination.
yes, try to get into people's head. But it's about 4/5 done, and I have a little bit more writing to do. And hopefully by the end of 2017, that will be in hands, and maybe we'll be sitting here talking.
I admire your, I don't know what the word is. You're being prolific, but it must be prolificity. I don't know. We can make up those words, right?
Check
We're
the phone
authors.
to see if it's an actual word. That's right.
Great, Roland.
Yes.
Thanks
Thank you,
again
Linda.
for coming.
Always good to be on. Thank you for having me.
It was fun.
Yes, absolutely.
Look at all those.